Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra 1, Unit 1.6 Notes. Today we're talking about ratios and proportions. Our learning target today is to be able to write ratios and simplify them, and to be able to solve proportions. Now, exactly what is a ratio? Well, a ratio is a relationship or comparison of two quantities. So a relationship or comparison of two quantities. Okay, and there are two main ways to represent a proportion. Okay, we can write it using a colon, A to B, or we can write it as a fraction, A over B. The key thing is, no matter which one you do, you always must reduce if possible. Okay, now examples of ratios in our specific class, and the key thing right here, guys, is when you're doing this, order matters. Very much so. Okay, so boys to girls, for our class we had 15 boys over 13 girls. Okay, and the other way that you would write that would be 15 to 13. All right, left-handed to right-handed. Remember that left-handed goes first. We only had one, and we had 27 right-handed. Either way of those would be accepted. Okay? Bears fans to non-Bears fans. Okay? We had 22 Bears fans and 6 people who don't know football. Okay? Because we live in Chicago, you should be a Bears fan. But when we write that as a fraction, that reduces. Okay? You can divide both of those by 2, and we would get 11 to 3. Okay? Students to teachers, we had in class, we had 28 students, and with Miss Carranza and myself, there's 2 of us. So as a fraction, that's 28 over 2, or if you reduce that, it's the same thing as saying 14 over 1. Okay? Now, the next thing that we're talking about is a proportion. A proportion are 2 ratios. So we have 2 ratios that are equal, okay, to each other. Okay, it's a proportion if they're 100% equal, okay? Now, do the following represents true proportions? Well, how do we figure that out? You can do it 3 different ways. 1, you can see if they reduce. 2, another way you can check, you can see if they divide and equal each other. And the third way that we can do is we can cross multiply. Okay? So when we cross multiply, 4 times 15 gives us 60. And I'm curious, does that equal 12 times 5, which is 60? So the answer to this one is yes. Excuse me. Okay? So, for number 2, 5 times 19, do you know what 5 times 19 is? I don't know it off the top of my head. That's what I'm taking on my calculator. Okay? 5 times 19 gives us 95. So, does 95 equal 90? No. All right, number 3, go ahead and pause the video and do that one on your own. Okay, and there's the work. You just multiply those 2 guys and you should get yes. Now, solving solving proportions. To solve proportions, we can use the cross product property, which states that if A over B equals C over D, well, the cross product would mean that A times D equals B times C, okay? Or B times C equals A times D. It doesn't matter which order you write them in, okay? So, the way that Ms. Carranza and I talked about it is we're always going to go, we're going to try to put those guys first and those ones second, okay? So, let's look at A. It tells us to rewrite each proportion using the cross product property, okay? So, we would multiply those two, and we would get W times Z, and that would equal the cross product of X times Y, okay? Now I'd be like, yo, Mr. Grice, I wrote it differently. Okay, well, the other way you would have write it would have been X times Y equals W times Z. Either one of those would be appropriate, okay? Now, in geometry and some other math classes, they're going to throw these other symbols, Greek symbols, or numbers at you, and you just treat them as a variable, okay? That's actually a theta down here, so you should have a little line through it. So, when you multiply these guys right here, we would have 3 times theta, and that would equal the E times pi. And that's it. Okay? So, why don't you guys try C? Go ahead and pause the video and see how you do. Okay, and when you multiply those out, you get delta times infinity equals beta times sigma. Now, I know you guys don't know the names of those things, but we've got from Greek, this is delta, the B is beta, and then we got, sorry, mine looks kind of crazy, sigma, and over here, the one that we talked about, this was theta, okay? You'll see a lot of those Greek symbols used as variables from time to time, okay? So, now it tells us to solve the following proportions, give exact answers, no decimals, reduce fractions, okay? So what they're throwing at us now is now we've got these variables that are going to be randomly thrown into our problems, okay? But we treat them the exact same way. Well, 5 times x is 5x. And we're going to see if that equals, well, 6 times 2, or 60 times 2, multiply that out, and you get 120. And from here out, we have to solve this, okay? So to get the x by itself, we have to divide by 5, and we get that x equals 60. Okay? And we can actually check that. You can always check your answer. And you would check to see if 5 over 2 equals 60 over, oh, why did I write 60 here, guys? Hopefully you're yelling at me. It's 24. I'm sorry. 60 over 24. Okay? And when if you divide those out, you get 2.5 equals 2.5. And we're happy. Okay? So you can always check to see if you get the right answer. Okay? So 10 times 7, that gives us 70. And does that equal 5 times y, which is 5y? Okay, to get the y by itself, we divide both sides by 5. Those cancel. And 70 divided by 5, well, that gives us a grand total of 14. So 14 equals y. All right, number 6. Cross multiply, we get negative 40 equals, and even if there's a number out in front of it, we still have to multiply. We get 6w. Okay? Now, to get the y by itself, we have to divide by 6. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And we're left with negative 40 over 6. And does that reduce? You bet your bottom it does. Okay, remember that we don't want negative 40 divided by 6. We don't want the decimal. Okay, we want the fraction, which reduces to negative 20 over 3. Okay? So negative 20 over 3 equals w. Okay? All right, let's do one more like that, number 7. Why don't you guys pause the video and see if you can do that one all on your own. Good luck. Okay, and after you cross multiply, you should get negative 48 equals 10p. You want to get the p by itself, so we have to divide both sides by p, and then reduce. So we get negative 24 over 5 equals p. Now, let's look at 8. I'm going to zoom in really good on this one. Now, the only difference here is we have n plus 1. And what we want to do is we want to put that inside the parentheses so we don't forget about it. Okay? So when we multiply now, we get 4 times 3, which is 12. And that equals 2 times n plus 1. Okay? And what we have to do is we have to distribute that. All right? So what our next answer should say is 12 equals 2 times n is 2n plus 2 times 1 gives us 2. Okay. And now we have to solve it like all of our other problems. We have to subtract the 2 because we want to get the n all by itself. And the last step would be is to divide. And then we get 5 equals n. Okay. You might be like, Mr. Grice, how do I check that? Well, first off, let me just write this down. So 5 equals n. Well, what we would do is we would plug it back in. So here's our check. We have 4 over 5 plus 1. And does that equal 2 over 3? Well, what's 5 plus 1? 5 plus 1 is 6. And does that equal 2 over 3? It does. Okay. All right, number 9. Set up our cross multiplication. 9 times 6 is 54. Hopefully you're not using a calculator for that. And then we have negative 2. Mr. Grice already said, just told you, put parentheses, and I forgot to. So we got negative 2 parentheses 2m minus 3. Okay? So our 54 stays the same. And now we have to distribute. So negative 2 times 2 gives us negative 4m. And guys, this is what you have to be very careful. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Okay? And now we just follow the rules of SADMAP. So we have to subtract 6 to both sides because we're trying to get the m all by itself. And to get rid of multiplication right there, we have to divide both sides by negative 4. And our answer would be negative 12 equals m. Okay, and that's it. Now, on n, we have variables on both sides, okay? So I'm going to put parentheses over here. And then I know that I have to multiply negative 5 times n plus 4. And on the right side, we had to multiply negative 3 times n, which gives me negative 3n. Okay? Now we have to distribute on the left, which gives us negative 5n. Negative 5 times positive 4 gives us negative 20. And now when we have variables on both sides, we have to move the smaller variable, okay? And this might be hard to see, but the smaller variable is actually the 5n, okay? So once we do that, we get negative 20 equals 2n. Okay, and now to get the n by itself, we have to divide. And you divide both sides by 2, and we get negative 10 equals n. Now, if we were to check a problem like this, we have to make sure that we just plug in negative 10 plus 4 over negative 3, and does that equal negative 10 over negative 5? Okay? And when you do the top, you would get negative 6 over negative 3, which is positive 2, and that equals 2. So you should always know if you get an answer right or wrong on a quiz. Okay? All right. We're just going to do 2 more. Let's look at 11. Okay? So same thing. Cross multiply, and we get 4m. And we're going to check to see if that equals, got to put that inside parentheses, 3 times 2m plus 1. Why don't you guys pause the video and see if you can figure this one out all on your own. Good luck. Okay, so I did the distribution, but now I'm going to move the smaller variable. The smaller variable is the 4m, and when we do that, we get 0 equals 2m plus 3. We're not done because the variable is not by itself. We have to subtract the 3 to both sides. And then the last thing to do would be to divide. And then our final answer would be negative 3 over 2 equals m. Okay? Now, the last one that we're going to do in class is number 13, or on the video, is when we get a problem like this. All right? Now, we don't have 2 fractions. Well, technically we do, because whenever we got this 9, we can put that 9 over 1, okay? And now we can do the cross product rule. 4 times 1 gives us 4. And then on the other side, remember we put that in parentheses, I keep forgetting that, we have 9 times 3 minus y, okay? So on the right side, I have to distribute that, and we get 27 minus 9y. To get the y all by itself, we have to subtract the 27, and we get negative 23 equals, that's a negative 9y. Don't forget that negative. And divide both sides by negative 9. 23 over 9 does not reduce. However, we're dividing two fractions, and when we divide two fractions, they equal a positive. And there you go. Now, if you tried the other ones and you'd like to see if you got those right, please come see Ms. Carranza or myself. We would love to help you out. Otherwise, that's it for Algebra 1, Unit 1.6 Notes. Thanks for watching.